Hello, my name is Dr. Rohling. I am the Archivist Curator Emerita of the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception here in Washington, D.C. Last year at this time, the National Shrine was concluding its celebration of its first 100 years of worship. This year, we are concluding the Ordinary Jubilee of 2025. As part of our Jubilee celebration, on Friday, December 19th at 7 a.m. in the Crypt Church, we will observe the very ancient Advent tradition of the Rorate Mass in honor of the Blessed Mother. Reverend Monsignor Walter Rossi, rector of the Basilica, will be the celebrant and homilist. It will also be live streamed and available on our YouTube channel. Please mark your calendars. Last year, I gave an introductory presentation on the history of the Rorate Mass, which is still available on our YouTube channel. Today, I would like to do something along the lines of a part 2 and take a closer look at the source of this tradition, which actually we need to go back to 1847, and when we had the largest influx of both German and Irish immigrants into the United States. Along with these communities of people came religious communities who began sending priests and nuns and sisters and brothers to care for the spiritual needs of these people. The German religious communities, most notable, who came over at that time in 1846 were the Benedictines, who set up their first abbey in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, St. Vincent's. And in 1847, the School Sisters of Notre Dame, who first came to St. Mary's, Pennsylvania, then to Baltimore, then to Milwaukee, and then to St. Louis. They became the largest teaching congregation in the United States. So today, I am wearing my Austro-German Trachten, a little bit of costuming from my ancestors, because I would like to talk to you a little bit about the Austro-German traditions and the influence of the Habsburg dynasty upon this tradition. The Habsburgs had 3 pillars of faith: the Eucharist, the cross, the Virgin Mary, and then kind of as a parenthetical, and the saints. Among these traditions that the immigrants brought with them was the paradise tree. You know it as the Christmas tree. Originally, as the paradise tree, it was only to be decorated with apples. Because of the Garden of Eden, it was not put up until December 24th, Christmas Eve, which at that time was the feast of Adam and Eve. So this is one of the ways our Christmas tree tradition begins. The other thing that happens is these communities bring with them their love and their devotion to Mary. The Marian votive masses are a particular acquisition, particularly during Advent season. Now, what is a votive mass? A votive mass does not correspond to the liturgy of the hours, or as it was called at that time, the divine office. It was a special purpose mass. It was an intercessory mass. It was a mass out of the liturgical cycle, hence the votive. And our mass that we will be celebrating is named for the Introit, the roráte coeli. And sometimes this Mass is also called the Mass of the Angel, because the Gospel is that of the story of the Annunciation. So how does all this move into the monastic side, or these religious communities who have an influence on us? Well, it goes into the divine office or the liturgy of the hours, and a very ancient medieval tradition of sleeping patterns of all things. there was something in the Middle Ages called the first and the second sleep. In the rule of St. Benedict, Benedict said that his monks were to be in bed by 7 p.m., which usually would be around sunset, or at least it would be dark. And then they were to arise at 2 a.m. If you were to calculate, that's about a 7-hour period. So they would arise at 2 a.m. and they would pray. And this was a practice not just unique to monks and nuns and sisters, but it was somewhat of a practice among the ordinary folk. And when they would get up at that hour, it was a very quiet time. And you would study, you could socialize a little bit, but very often you spent the time in prayer. So it is in these wee hours of the morning, these very quiet hours of solitude, these hours of darkness where a lot of prayer goes on in the monasteries. It is very unique in some locales, and some traditions continue this. We talk about communities of monks and priests who still today get up at these hours, and to our calendar, to our way of thinking, how could you get up at that hour of the night? Well, this is why, because they went to bed at 7 o'clock, you know. They were really, their lives were in sync with the rhythm of the sun and the moon and the heavens. So as the earth would revolve and the sun would come up and the sun would go down, that's how you began your day and how you ended your day. So after the first sleep, which I said the monks would get up usually around 2, and they would do their first hour of prayer. And some communities would allow the monks to go back to sleep for the second sleep, usually around 3 a.m. Benedict did not, but in lieu thereof, he allowed his monks to take a nap during the day if they need to. So we have these liturgies, these hours of prayer that coincide with the rhythm of the sun and the moon. The first office, Benedict called the night office, or the vigil. Later on, it became known as the nocturne. But it was also known as matins. Now, matins is an interesting word. It's a Latin word, which is an explanation for the Greek goddess of the dawn. And it is also, the dawn in Latin, the word would be the aurora, and it was also in reference to gold. So this Mass that we are celebrating was called the Rorate Mass. It was called the Mass of the Angels, and it was also called the Golden Mass, not because of money or anything else, but because of matins, that it was involved in the early days with that liturgical hour. Eventually, matins kind of separates, and there's this evolution process, and the last 3 psalms that are sung at matins become what we know as lauds. And the reason the word lauds is used is because these psalms are always praising God. There's an abundance of laudates. So this is where we get that name. So we have all of this going on in the liturgy of the hours. And normally, after lauds, the conventual Mass, or the Mass of the community, would be celebrated. Well, what happens here is they move that Mass. They get special permission to move it, not after lauds, but before lauds. So it is this juxtaposition that becomes the real key to the liturgical importance of this Mass. Also because it is, again, a votive Mass. It's not a regular Mass. It does not belong to the liturgical cycle of the divine office or the liturgy of the hours. We, in our time, in the land of the 24-hour generator and the joy of having light whenever we want to turn on the switch, we are enamored with the candles. That's the allure. A little bit of seduction even. It is romantic, it is nostalgic, it is even a little bit exotic to have Mass strictly by candlelight. But back in the day, in the Middle Ages, that's all they had. So this wasn't anything new for them. What was new, or could be different, was how many candles you used. I ran across a story of, in the Habsburg monarchy, about the exposition of the Blessed Sacrament in the evening, and they used 1,000 candles on the altar. So you can well imagine that with that amount of candlelight, it was well illuminated, almost as if they had incandescent lighting. So that was a particular difference. That was something special for them. Also, candles were very important. In every church, today we have little stands where you can buy not buy, but donate for a devotional candle. In those days, there were wax kiosks throughout the churches, because not only would you get a devotional candle, but sometimes your penance after confession was to donate so many pounds of wax to the church. In other words, you would buy so many candles. So what makes the Rorate Mass special is not the candlelight. What makes it special is its placement in the liturgical cycle and the fact that it is a votive Mass. So there is, yes, indeed, there is something transcendent, mystical about the wee hours of the morning, particularly when we are approaching the longest night of the year and the shortest day. So this Marian devotion that comes to us basically from the Austro-German region is the first link in a chain of significant liturgical events that turn on the primordial understanding of light and dark. And we have to have both. You cannot appreciate the light if you don't have the darkness. And you can't appreciate the darkness without the light. In the early days, when you used to have the blessing of the new fire and you would come into the church on the vigil of Easter, the church would be absolute, because it would be midnight, it would be absolutely dark. And when you see a candle or a light walking into this darkness, when they say the light that dispels the darkness, you can actually see that little halo that just kind of keeps growing. One of the most magnificent moments here in the National Shrine is on Holy Saturday, when they bring the Easter candle up the main aisle. The church is dark, the candle is coming in. Eventually, the little candles, the little tapers that everybody is holding, become illuminated, and you see this wave of light coming in. And since we have our domes finished, you get this reflection coming down from the mosaics. It is very transcendent. So what am I talking about Easter for when we're talking about Christmas and Rorate? Aha. In the Rorate Mass, at the very end, one of the traditions is, which we practice, is the singing of the antiphon, Ecce Dominus Veniet. Behold, the Lord will come with all his saints, and on that day there shall be a great light. Alleluia. This is sung 3 times, and each time it's intoned a half step higher. Where do we do this again? We do something similar on Good Friday when we bring the cross in for veneration. Behold the wood of the cross. It is intoned 3 times, and each time a half step higher. On Holy Saturday, with the blessing of the new fire, we sing the threefold Alleluia, and each time it is intoned a half step higher. So you see, we've got this arc of light and darkness that fills our liturgical cycle, and it is powerful. And we parallel Christmas and Easter. This is This is the beginning, Advent, the beginning of our liturgical year. This is where we begin, and we are climbing up to this pinnacle on Easter Sunday. So there was a rhythm in all of this, and it was a rhythm that also incorporated everything that surrounded the people and everything that they could easily understand because they lived in it, they touched it, they could feel it. It was this cyclic liturgical calendar, and it is a very important calendar. So we put this Mass right before Lauds. So why? Because it's going to be a votive Mass, and it is going to be about Mary bringing the light into the world. So the juxtaposition, the reason why we are allowed to somehow alter the liturgical cycle, if you will. So putting that Mass, that Rorate Mass, that Mass of the Angel, that Golden Mass, before Lauds allows us to speak of Mary as the dawn. And on this Rorate Mass that we will celebrate, we will sing the wonderful hymn, Mary the Dawn, Christ the Perfect Day. And this is exactly what is being set up. This Advent season, Advent is a Marian season because it's all about waiting. It's about her waiting. It's about her waiting to give birth. It's about our waiting to be born. So we have this moment. We have Mary, who is the spiritual dawn, and we have her preceding her child, Jesus the Christ, who is the Son, S-U-N, of justice. So we're going from darkness into light. One of the most powerful moments in the Crypt Church last year was as we were singing, Behold, the Lord will come. It was literally starting to dawn, and the light was starting to filter in through the back windows, through the stained glass windows of the Crypt Church, and the ambient light was starting to come in, and almost even overpowering the candlelight. And these are the moments of natural wonder that are built into our liturgical cycle that make it the powerful faith element that it is. It's not about whether or not we have Mass by candlelight. Actually, we always have Mass by candlelight because candles always are used at Mass, but obviously they're not illuminating the whole church. And back in the day, in the 8th century, when this tradition started, candlelight was nothing unusual. What was unusual was its placement in the liturgical cycle and the fact that it was focused on Mary. We are focusing on Mary, who is the spiritual dawn of the Son of Justice. Just a little digression here. One of the traditions about the hay in the manger scene, in the presepio, in the creche, early church teaching used to say the hay was symbolic of the golden sun. So, do you ever wonder why we always have a lot of gold at Christmas? And I think it's got a lot to do with this whole concept of the dawn, the light that breaks forth, the golden light. So, I hope you will join us on Friday morning, December 19th at 7 a.m. in the Crypt Church, either in person or live stream, and greet Mary the Dawn, Christ the Perfect Day. I would encourage you, if you are watching at home, turn off all of your lights, light your candles. If you come to the shrine, yes, we will certainly have tapers for you, but I would also invite you to bring your own lanterns. Not flashlights. we want candles. So let us pause and remember Mary the dawn, Christ the perfect day.